No, look at
Oh, look at you.
Wayne, we are here at the 12th Armored Division Memorial Museum in Abilene, Texas. It is October 6th, 2001, and we are here during the 55th annual reunion. My name is Michelle Colvin, and we are here with Wayne Young. So Wayne, why don't you please tell us your birthday and where you were raised?
Oh, I'm a Wisconsin boy. And I was born August 13th, 1921. I just celebrated my 80th birthday. And our sons came up and we had a party. And,
Good. So tell me about your parents. What did they do?
Well, I was from a depression family. My dad was unemployed, and we lived in an old schoolhouse in Spring Green, Wisconsin. My grandmother lived next door, and my dad was unemployed, and I think it was something like 40% unemployment in the United States. And my dad got a phone call down at the village hall, and it was the REA program that President Roosevelt had introduced. And he finally went to work. And my older brother also went to work, and they put up power lines in 5 different Wisconsin counties. And there's a historical marker by one of the homes in one of the counties, the first farm home to have electricity in the whole state. But it was in the 30s, and things weren't like they are today. They talk about recession and unemployment today. It's nothing compared to what it was then. It was much more serious problem. But there was always that feeling of the war. We had a feeling. But there was an awful lot of isolationist people. In fact, President Roosevelt went on radio and said that he'd never send the boys overseas. Then the attack at Pearl Harbor, and that changed everything.
Where were you?
They all went to work. I was 21, and when I went into the service, and I was working at a grocery store as a helper. Not as a manager. I was only, but I had a job, 22 cents an hour, by the way, $4 a week. But movies were only 10 cents. You buy a hamburger for a nickel, so it went quite a ways.
So, how did you enter the service?
Well, a friend of mine wanted to go in. We were going to be drafted anyway. But Roland said to me, let's enlist together. So we did. We went to Milwaukee and we enlisted. Then we went to Fort Sheridan. This was October 17th, just about this time of the year. And we went to Fort Sheridan, Illinois. Then to Camp Campbell, Kentucky, which was the 12th Armored Division being formed. And we went down from Fort Sheridan on a train in civilian clothing. And then when we got to Camp Campbell, we were issued clothing, shoes, and all the necessary things that the Army provided.
So when did you hit Camp Barkley?
Oh, Camp Barkley. Let's see. It was 1943. I think it was in April of '43, something like that. We spent all of '43 then on maneuvers and part of '44. Then in September or August '44, we got on a troop train here in Abilene, and we had to pull the shades down. And if the train stopped, lieutenants got out, so none of us could go out of the train. See, none of us would have anyway. But I remember this one, he kept looking up and down, and then on our way to New York State, where we were going to embark on a trip to Europe, we had a siding where they had pulled in at night between freight cars, so people going by couldn't even see it was a troop train. And we got to Camp Shanks, New York, and that's where we prepared to go overseas. And I remember they fed us steaks and steaks and steaks to keep us happy. Steaks for breakfast. And I got one trip into New York City. I remember crossing the Brooklyn Bridge and getting down to Times Square. I imagine it's much different today, but I can remember the ribbon going around one of the big high buildings telling us about the progress of the war in Europe. And then we got back to camp about 5 days in Camp Shanks. We got on the boat, and we all had to stay below. We couldn't go up on deck. And finally the boat started to move, and somebody came down and said, "We just passed the Statue of Liberty." And we got out to seas, and at that time there was a lot of ships being sunk by the German wolf pack, and there were 3 bunks, and we'd take turns. I slept for 8 hours or whatever, and then another person, and then same way up above the other 2 or 3 bunks. And there was always somebody up or somebody in a bunk. And they served everything below deck. Then finally we got out to sea, out to seas. Then we went up on deck. And somebody said, "Where are we now?" And somebody said, "Oh, we're just off the Azores. That's near Spain." And we had intended to go to France. See, D-Day had occurred 3 months earlier. But it was backed up so far, there wasn't any space. So they said, "You have to go to England." So everybody knew now that they had changed the plans and that we were going to go to England. We went into Southampton, England, and then we took a train over to what they call Tidsworth Barracks. And it was a series of, looked like a series of apartment buildings. All it had was a fireplace for heat, but it wasn't cold weather anyway. So, and we stayed in Tidsworth a couple of weeks. Then we went to France.
Yep. And you were at Le Havre, correct?
We went up the Rouen River. And we landed in a town called Rouen. Now, this wasn't everybody of the 12th, just ours. We were on a comparatively small boat. And we got into Rouen, and this is, there was a historical marker. Joan of Arc had been crucified there. And I remember, I have an old postcard that I mailed home, but the censor cut the bottom off saying it was Rouen, see? But I still have that, and it shows Joan of Arc on a horse and so forth. But she was one of those people that at that time they just did away with, and this was way back before, 200 or 300 years before. And then we, from Rouen, we started moving.
So who was your captain?
We had several. We had officers that were in charge of the motor pool, radio. We were a signal company. And I was in message center, and we were assigned to jeeps. And we carried messages between this message center. You'd see people coming in with what they wanted the other guys to know up in front. And we'd carry the message up there, then we'd come back. And sometimes it was 30 miles, sometimes it was 5 miles, sometimes you couldn't find them, and so forth. But we were trained on motorcycles in the United States at Camp Campbell. But when we got to Camp Shanks, New York, I asked the lieutenant, where's the motorcycles? Oh, he said, we aren't going to have motorcycles. Even though you're trained on them, you're going to have a Jeep. So that's what my job was, to get the message through. And in our reunion here today, there's 3 of us here that were messengers. Gene Ryan and another fellow by the name of Kennedy. And we all 3 had Jeeps and were messengers. And we're here today.
So who were some of your other buddies in your unit?
Oh, I really can't. What happened was, with a signal company, you don't stay together like you do with an infantry company or a tank company. You go to different units, see. As radio operators would go with a tank company and so forth. See? So out of the 380 people, there was probably only 15 in message center where I was, say. The rest were scattered all through the other companies. And there's 12,000 people, 12,000 soldiers in an armored division like the 12th. 12,000. Now our company had 380. Now I'd forgotten there was 380, but Major Cure, who's here, he told me yesterday that there were 380. And we had a picture taken at Tidsworth. And the museum has one of those copies of the picture. We're all in one big line, 380 of us, before we went to France. But once we got to Rouen, then we split up.
So what was your first experience in battle?
Our job was not to kill. Our job was to evade capture. I remember putting the message under the seat. There was a padded seat. You could lift it up. I'd put it under there. There was 2 of us. 2 of us that one was in case you got hit or ill, or you had a co-pilot, you know, like, and I'd get tired and he'd get tired. Sometimes it would get dark, and we'd sit sleeping up in the Jeep. We didn't go to a motel.
So you weren't ever caught in the middle of battle?
Oh, the battle was all around you. You would hear people screaming in old buildings that were blowing apart. You know what I mean? And there was no escape from, even though you were an infantry soldier, there was no escape from war. It was all around you. I saw women, when they had a bad snowstorm, pushing baby buggies in snow that high, trying to get away.
Did you ever get injured?
I was in the hospital. I was on an advance party before, after we reached a certain point along the Rhine River. And I came down with pneumonia. And they put me in the tent. And there were 3 wounded German soldiers in the tent. And I remember this guy saying, we better take care of him, get him out of here. So They put me in a hospital in Maastricht, Germany, or Holland, Maastricht, Holland. And I was there about a week, and then I felt great. So then the Battle of the Bulge started, right about that time. And they put us all in ambulances. It took us down almost to Paris, Fontainebleau, and replacement depot. And I spent about a week there, and then I went back to the signal company. But as far as shrapnel, sometimes you'd hear hitting buildings nearby. But I was never wounded, thankfully. Thankfully, I wasn't. Yeah. But I had what they call trench foot too, and I went all those months, maybe I think it was about 6 weeks, without taking my shoes off. And what it is, it scabs in between your toes and it's swelling. So what I did, even though the cold weather, I'd take my shoes off. And they had when I got to the company, they had a capsule they dropped in water and made me soak my feet. And eventually it healed. But there were several messengers that had bad accidents. It wasn't an easy job, even though you weren't a frontline soldier, you know. And I always felt if I ever bumped into these guys, what would I do? I always thought, you know. And they weren't too far away. You could hear them talking sometimes. You could hear them talking in German.
So did you ever have any association with the French civilians?
Oh yeah, I love the French. I love Paris. It was a wonderful city, even during that bad times, and even the little villages around. And I got a lot of postcards and of the different areas, and not a lot, but a few. And but I didn't get to Paris until after the war. And but the French people, I thought they were great. They put up with an awful lot. They were divided, you know. Yeah. One was Free France and one was Vichy France.
So did you have any association with any of the concentration camps?
We were going down the highway, and Trenholm and I, another soldier, driver, and we came across one. But an infantry company was already there. But they had these guards lined up, German guards, and they had I didn't go too far in. The stench was so bad. And bodies piled as high as that desk. And but that was one. It was at Landsberg where Hitler wrote Mein Kampf. He was in the prison there, and he wrote the book Mein Kampf. And that's where this, where I first. There were others. There were many. There may have been 100. But this was the only one I saw, Landsberg. And that's where Hitler had written his book, Mein Kampf. He was imprisoned there earlier until he got in power.
So where were you when they announced that the war was over?
That was May 5th. And we were going down the highway. And here comes a Jeep with 2 white flags. And it's the mayor of a community. And he gets out of this car, and in the back seat was a girl. So I knew the chances are he was okay, you know. And Trenholm says, "What is it?" "I am the Bürgermeister. I am the mayor of the community. We wish to surrender to the American soldiers." So we talked it over and we said, well, Mayor, we really can't handle this, but there's an infantry company down the road. We'll wait till they get here. So pretty soon this half-track came and the guys got out and they took over. But here we had a chance of accepting the surrender of a whole town. And I often wondered how large it was, but most of these communities had people who were refugees, Polish, Russian, and all kinds of different nationalities, and sleeping in churches, on the lawns. He said to me, all German soldiers have left. All guns are in the church. But we got a write-up in the paper on that one. That our headquarters printed a 2-page sheet, and they told all about it. I still have a copy. But the mayor, he wanted to make sure the Americans got in, because the Russians were coming, but they were further north. And I think what he wanted was he thought the people would be better treated under American occupation, see. And it was eventually. It was eventually occupied by Americans.
Did you have to work in the Army of Occupation?
I got transferred to an infantry company from the 12th because war was still on with Japan, and we were going to go, but there was another series of backups there, and this was in August, in August, and they dropped the bomb on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and we had to get out of the boat, and they said, anybody want to go on furlough? The war is over, So I went on furlough to England, and then I came back, and they were still there, and they said, would you like to go again, Wayne? I said, yeah, I'll go. So I went to Scotland. So I had 2 furloughs in a row. Then I came back, and by that time, things had, we started everybody started going back to the United States.
So what was it like coming back to the States?
Well, I tell you, when you're that young, and you have had these kind of experiences, it seems kind of, everything's so, these people didn't even know there was a war on, There's no buildings blown apart. People were driving around in their cars that had ration stamps. Everybody looked well fed. And my sister said to me when I got home, I started talking about it, she says, what war? Because people in the United States really didn't suffer as a war country, They lost sons, they lost husbands. We lost 300-some thousand casualties and so forth. And they got bad news in the mail about prisoners of war. Your son is a prisoner of war, or he's been wounded, or he's killed in action. This occurred. But we didn't have these bombing attacks, like they did in Europe. Or like New York City just recently. Now that, to me, was reminiscent of things that happened in the 40s, World War II, in Europe. Complete destruction of buildings.
So when you look back on the war, how do you feel like your war experience has changed your life?
I was too young to be affected. I don't think it gave me a job. You know what I mean? We're a Depression family, and I think a lot of the boys older went into the CCCs, and then later they went into the Army, and the CCC camps were similar, like the Army. They wore uniforms and so forth. And but I was too young for the CCCs. But a neighbor boy was old enough. And I remember him coming home on weekends. But when I went into the Army, it was kind of like getting a job or having something to do. Because there just weren't any jobs, even though I had a job in the grocery store, see, like I mentioned earlier, stocking shelves and things like that.
So when did you marry?
Bev and I got married June 14th, 1947.
And children?
We have 3 sons. Paul's with us. And Paul lives in Colorado Springs. And then we have a son living in Madison and one in Rockford, Illinois.
So what did you do once you were out of the service?
I went into business for myself, and I managed to do quite well.
Okay, well, when you think about back to your war experiences, what would you like to leave for the future generations?
What was this again?
What would you like the future generations to learn from your war experiences?
I really can't say. I don't know. I'm sure Grandpa's told them plenty, and Daddy told them plenty, and so on. But I don't know. I never talked about it much as the boys grew up. On occasion, it would come up with. It was kind of a, let's forget it, you know.
When did you hear about the 12th Association?
Oh, I had a friend by the name of Emsley, who lived in New York. And I got a telephone call from him and said, did you know there's an association of our old 12 members? And I said, no, I didn't. He said, I just sent your membership in. You'll be hearing from us. So then we started going to the conventions and so forth. And we've been to Cleveland, we've been to Louisville, we've been to St. Louis, we've been to San Antonio, we've been to all, but there were, it wasn't, we were later. I think in 1947 or 48, at the Stevens Hotel in Chicago, they had a convention, and I went to that one, and then I didn't go until I heard from Emsley, which is maybe 20 years later. But I've enjoyed the conventions. This one's been a little more hectic and so forth, you know, but.
Okay. Well, did you have any other experiences or comments that you wanted to make before we say goodbye?
No, I think we've covered it very well.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Wayne. I really appreciate your time.
Okay.